Arratsalde on eta eskerrik asko etortzeagatik. Gaur kontatutako zinea zikloaren saio berri bat izango dugu. Buenas tardes y muchas gracias por venir. Hoy estamos en familia, pero bueno, va a ser una sesión muy guay. Como sabéis, empezamos con la retrospectiva Bas de Vos en enero. Él ha hecho 4 largometrajes. Me pasaré al inglés. Sabéis que tenéis receptores y habrá traducción simultánea durante toda la sesión. Hello, Bas. Thank you very much for being with us. Yeah, I was telling them that we began with your retrospective in January and we already watched your 4 feature films. If I'm not wrong, you made first 3 short films? Yeah?
Yeah, I made 4 short films.
4.
I still made in school, and then 2 when I came out.
Okay. And then your 4 feature films, Violet, Hellhole, Ghost Tropic, and Here. We had the opportunity to watch Here in the last edition of the San Sebastian Film Festival. And in the case of Violet, that was your first film. It was in 2014, so it's been already 10 years. When I watched your 4 films, I had a feeling that maybe you don't agree, but that's fine. But that it was like a trip from violence to tenderness. It was a feeling I had. And my proposition for today is also to have a trip all together. So we will watch like different fragments of the films that you've made. And after watching each of the fragments, we will have a conversation about different topics. Okay, so let's begin. Thank you. Nagore nahi dezunean, Violet. So Violet, yeah? You liked the first fragment I chosen? Yeah? Okay. So it premiered in Berlinale in 2014. You won the Generation 14 Plus section with it. And I'm sure that there are many people that already watched the film, but maybe to have a little context about the film before we start talking about it. Violet begins with a really violent scene where 2 boys kill another one. And the protagonist is a boy called Jesse, or Jesse, that is the friend of the boy that is killed. So during the film, we live like also a trip, internal and external trip with this traumatic event that he lived. And he's a BMX rider, right? The ones that we see in the first shot. I've chosen this fragment because one of the things that I love about your films is that you are really good, combining the telling a story, but also with the power of images and sounds. Because I feel that sometimes we have these kind of moments, right? That we see a BMX riders group seeing a fire, then like a archival footage moment, a camera then that feels like a surveillance camera, and then the arrest of the two boys. No dialogues, but we understand and everything. So I was really curious about this process. Is it already in the writing that you imagine these image moments, or is it later in the shooting or in the editing? How do you work with this power of images and sounds?
Well, I think in Violet there's something specific. Like there are these 5 moments where we sort of make a little step into a different kind of image, a different kind of texture, a different kind of mode of watching. And these are 5 moments I didn't make myself, but that I asked someone to make.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this in every film I made until now, I always like to have a sort of a collaboration,
Okay.
like something that is to me somebody that I like or whose work I really like, that I like to bring in to the film somehow. And here it's the work of actually they worked as a duo, I have to say, of two video artists, artist filmmakers in Belgium, Herman Asselbergs and Fairuz. And Fairuz often used to edit for Herman, and then they start to work together. Um, and I mean, without getting too much into the details of their work, but I really appreciate their work a lot, and especially Herman's work is always it's quite political, it's quite thoughtful and emotive about the, let's say, the claim that an image can have upon reality. And I was very aware in making this film, and I'm even more aware of it maybe now with the distance of a couple of years, of this like the aesthetic quality of this film and the sort of maybe weight in the image. Like there is such a. I'm not saying I don't like this film. I'm saying that it's something that I just feel it feels far away.
Yeah.
But I think I realized in the making of this film that there was something a bit closed maybe about the images, and I wanted to have a sort of counterweight or something that would bring in a different way of seeing and a different way of feeling. And so I basically asked Herman and Fairuz to work with all kinds of footage around the film. It could be stuff that we gave them, like the surveillance footage.
Yes.
It could be home videos of the boys that ride their bikes. It was Google Street View images they found.
Yeah.
And they really started making this small montage without any sound that they gave to me. It was like, I think, a 5-minute film that I then cut up in 5 parts and just inserted in the film.
Wow. I didn't know it was a collaboration. I didn't even know that it was something that was given to you. So it was, in this case, it was more maybe in the editing, right? That you decided where to put these
Yeah, it
moments.
really was it's not entirely true. I start to remember now also. Oh my God. I am actually an 8-year-old man. But so, no, it's coming back. I had written in the script moments in which something would happen. And I remember calling them media images. And I remember calling them media images because it sounded really vague. And it could be whatever. But I remember that my first impulse was like, maybe something of this broader world can penetrate into the story. Maybe the way the news cycle deals with stuff like this, maybe that can enter this film. But I was really afraid that to make it myself because I was afraid I would again like close it off and make it maybe too beautiful.
Yeah.
And then Herman did something else with it, and I was very happy that he did so.
Yeah.
Because I think my ideas were awful. So I was, yeah.
Okay. And maybe this was a question that I didn't have here, but now I wanted to ask you, because I think that working with BMX riders, it's a really good idea too. I mean, there are some shots in the film are so beautiful. So when did you make this decision about having this universe inside the film?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't say so if you see me now, but I used to ride BMX when I was young, so it was something that was part of my youth and also part of my, in a way, part of my own physical experience. Like,
Okay.
I suck at all sports. I was also a really horrible BMX rider, but I really love this um, this very beautiful short moments of weightlessness. And again, like thinking about this film as and the weight and the questions and the mood, and I was like, oh shit, I need to have something that is also about being young and about this wish of flying, escaping. I don't know. And the amazing thing about these guys in the film, they are so much better than I ever was. But I still recognized a little bit this what goes through the mind when you jump.
Okay.
Because these are like it's hills made in forests often, and they're made of dirt.
Yeah.
And the guys jump and they jump high. They go like
Really
3
high.
meters, 4 meters high.
Yeah.
And at the top, when they're at the peak, they all make this little sound. It's like, oh.
Oh, really?
It's in the film also. There's this moment where you see them fly through the air, and all of them make this sound like, ha! And it's because they know in this moment they know it can go wrong.
Okay.
Like either I land or I crash.
Wow.
And it's I remember this also, this experience of like just being there and knowing from here it will go down.
Yeah.
But now I'm still on top. I still am in control.
Okay.
And this is where I can lose control.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was just, I thought it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, really beautiful. I wasn't aware of the sound. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so let's go to the second film. Okay, Hellhole 2019. It premiered in Berlinale again, but in Panorama in this time, and you won the Best Director award in Hong Kong, right? Okay, so in this case, I chose 2 fragments that are not one next to the other one in the film, but we will watch the 2 not together with a fade out to a black, but just not to worry. Okay?
I'm not worried.
Okay.
Misschien moet jij dat ook eens doen. Is dat goed dat ik wel licht aansteek? Ik denk echt dat je even moet gaan liggen, Hans. Het kan nog lang duren.
Ik ga niet naar huis. Ik zie geen andere patiënten.
Jij bent mijn zus, ik blijf bij u tot op het einde. Als er iets is, maak je wel wakker, ga maar even op de zetel liggen.
Ik ga alleen zijn. Jij zit alleen. Hoe doet je dat?
Geen flauw idee.
Als klein kindje kon je daar zo helemaal alleen soms in het gras zitten. Jij zat daar soms zo stil. Zonder te bewegen. Ik was jaloers.
Well, in the case of Hellhole, I think that I read in some interview, but we could talk about a film that it's kind of a portrait of Brussels, that is the city you live. In the film, we also see like small parts of the lives of different characters that lives in Brussels as well. I chose these two fragments because of the movement of the camera. When I watched for the first time Hellhole, the corner shots really surprised me. Not just because I think that they are really beautiful, but also because I think that they were really original. I mean, having like a corner as a protagonist, it was something that surprised me. And I also chose this fragment with the alarm clock just next to the corner because of somehow the first question I've made about Violet in Hellhole again, we could see these moments where suddenly there's like a giant alarm clock and it's like a bet that you do, you know, that there's something that you believe in images in a way that I really like. It's really interesting, things that you don't see in other films. I was wondering about the camera movement in the corners, also related to the second fragment, because there's also this beautiful camera movement. Also related, maybe there are many questions, sorry, but it's a really intimate and difficult moment. The partner of the sister of the doctor is dying, and you decide to film them from a distance. It's super interesting how that intimacy is filmed, and then with this amazing movement. So when did you decide about the movements? And in the case of the second fragment, I was also wondering if you could talk about the shooting. I don't know if it was difficult technically, but I was really curious about it.
Yes, I think a lot of thinking in Hellhole was about space
Yeah.
and about private space versus public space,
Mhm.
and also in this thinking, just just the not super original, but the idea that private space seems to have stopped existing because we are always connected. We are always in the world, and just before we close our eyes, we look at the phone and we like something on Instagram and buy something on Amazon, and then we fall asleep.
Yeah.
And it's only when we're asleep that we are truly private
Yeah.
and separate from the world. So this is something I was thinking a lot about because the film Hellhole, it also takes place against a very specific background. We had just went through the the terrorist attacks in 2016,
Yeah.
and I was writing the film in the lead up to these attacks and then in the aftermath of these attacks. So, and very strangely, not nothing prophetic or whatever, but I was already working a lot and thinking a lot about this because in the aftermath of the attacks in Paris in 2015, there all of a sudden there was a lot of military in the streets in Brussels, but
Okay.
like a lot and very present. And I lived in the center of the city, so every time I brought my baby daughter to kindergarten, I had to like pass by these military guys with guns, and that left a that left a mark on me. And
Yeah.
it also really made me think about how different people live different lives and have different relationships to public space
Yeah.
than I do. Like, I knew that these guys, they were not there for me. They were there for boys with a darker skin, with a beard, with a backpack.
Yeah.
And this was super tangible. And of course, Brussels is an extremely diverse city. It's a city that is one of the most diverse cities in the world, and it's also one of the reasons why I want to make films about this city and why I think a lot about the city is because it's a very specific and peculiar space. But so to go back to the corner and the house and the movements, they I think they all originated in this thinking about what is the difference in living space from where I grew up. I come from the countryside, and so
Yeah.
my first film I think is in some way, some weird twisted way, a film about me growing up. but then this film is much more about me and other people living through a specific moment in time in Brussels. And I thought that there was something interesting about the fact that where I come from, all of our houses, you can walk around them. I know the shape of the house where I grew up. I know its shape and I can envision it and I can turn it around in my head if I close my eyes. And then I think about the apartment where I live now for 6 years. I have no idea what it looks like from the outside. It's the 4th floor, I can barely see it. Like, and it doesn't have a clear shape. And so it cannot be in my dreams in the same way that my house growing up can be present in my dreams. And this is how childish my brain really works, but like taking that idea, the idea that in a city there is always another wall, there's always something new behind the corner, but there's also another wall, something that divides lives, divides space. And then this doesn't really exist in the countryside where I grew up. I wanted to make it literal in the film. I wanted it to be present somehow. This delineation of space when we move around corners in the city. And there are 2 of them in the film. One in the beginning and one more towards the end. And somewhere in the middle is this scene with the house. It's also the only scene that is not in the city. So in a way, it's an anomaly in the whole film. And then about intimacy. I'm reading a lot of weird books about dying planets for a new film I'm making, and I read this way of thinking about the natural world, for example, without interfering, and it's called intimacy without proximity. As a way of thinking of having valuable relationships with the world without having to be there. And having to mess with it unnecessarily, which is something we are very bad at, human beings. But I think intimacy without proximity is something that it resonates with me. I think I find something that is very intimate is to let me try to make this a little bit more clear. To see somebody that you love alone is an impossibility. Like you cannot, because then you are present, and then he or she is no longer alone, and your presence for sure will alter him or her. But in film, we can pretend that this happens. So I am interested in this film in people on their own, not lonely people, but people on their own, people when they are alone in their private spaces. And we can be with them in these moments, and we can be present while they're sitting there, dreaming or thinking about what they're going to eat at night. And I find that just something that is very beautiful, but because it's film, it's also this intimacy without proximity. We are not actually there, because we cannot be. But film can pretend, and I think thoughts like that have always been just in me. Like I have nothing really clever to say about it.
No, it's really interesting. No, because I was just curious because about this decision to film like this, a moment like this, and I think that you answered, and it's super interesting the way that you could pretend in film that you are there but you are not. So it's intimacy but not proximity, right? You don't mess with it. It's like a distance of, if you want, even of respect somehow.
Yeah, this is something I mean, it's very hard to say something that doesn't sound unintendedly pretentious, but I like this idea of for a character
Yeah.
and respect for privacy of a character,
Yeah.
which is something that I sometimes really lack in films.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find films cruel.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find a lot of films quite cruel. Cruel in how close they get,
Yeah.
and cruel in how what horrible things they put their characters through with us, like up front.
That's it. Yeah, totally agree.
So yeah,
Yeah.
not in a way of making any um, unsustainable statements, but just like in a way for me, very slowly I think the films are moving in a opposite path, like away from cruelty.
And thank you. And I was really curious about the technical part of this shot. I don't know if it was difficult or not. I mean, a nightmare. Okay. I thought so, but sometimes it's like I don't really know how they did it.
Yeah, the thing is like it's also not one shot. The problem was like I want during the shot I want the sun to come up,
Sure.
and we were like, yeah, that must be possible, no? Like,
Yeah.
but it turned out that either you do this with like a motion control, which is like this giant, very expensive robot that can do with the same camera movement multiple times.
Okay.
Which was not a possibility because
Okay.
it was just too expensive, or you have to be creative. So we were creative. First of all, to find a house that has
Yeah.
enough space around it to actually
Sure.
have a camera moving around it was probably the biggest problem of the whole production.
Yeah.
Just to find a house, and also a house that we liked, that we thought
Sure.
was had something and spoke to us. And then, yeah, how to do it? Because
Yeah.
normally you would think of a circular track or
Sure.
something. Well, it turns out that does not exist this
Okay.
large. The largest one in the world has a diameter of 22 meters, and it's in Japan. I know all about it now. Circular tracks, I know everything. So we had to come up with another way of doing this, and so we were like, okay, maybe a crane, an arm,
Okay.
and maybe an arm that we can put on the roof
Okay.
that can make this
Okay.
motion.
Okay.
So that was doable, but it was still very hard because the roof was literally made out of cardboard. So we had to like find the one spot where there was like supporting walls crossing each other to put the crane on top. It was a 14-meter long arm, so it's really long.
Sure.
And at the end there's like a 35-millimeter camera.
Wow.
So this, yeah, I tried not to think about it. And then we had this wonderful, weird, half Indian, half Flemish grip dude.
Yeah.
Who said like, I'm just gonna push it with my finger. And he literally like stood on the roof and he pushed the arm with his finger.
Really?
And he did multiple takes like this. So there's a take at night, there's a take
Wow.
just before, there's a take when it's still really clear and daylight.
Yeah.
And then later we put them in the editing program.
Yeah.
They were like 2 or 3 frames apart. So he's like a human motion control.
Wow.
You don't need a robot, you need him. It's way cheaper,
Yeah.
and he makes jokes, so it's like
I couldn't imagine that was like this.
crazy.
That's great. And just to know, but the choreography of the lights in the house, for example, it was something that you thought about before?
I thought about before, and then after, like now being a bit older, I'm not so happy about it.
Okay. You don't like it?
No, I wish I left the lights off. Maybe one.
I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
But
prefer
that's
you.
fine.
No, but I mean sometimes you think something is a good idea, and then either it doesn't work and you need to adapt, or
Yeah.
sometimes you just change as a human being, and I have the feeling like in some ways I have changed a lot just in these 10 years of making the first film and then this
Sure.
last film. And so you also, if I look back at these things, I'm in a way still really proud of it, and I still really like it, but I also feel I think a healthy and natural distance
Yeah.
to them. Choices that I wouldn't make anymore, or that I would just differently.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's go to the other one. Ghost Tropic, 2019. I think that it was quite amazing because you premiered Hellhole in Berlinale in 2019, but in the same year, in Cannes, in the Quinzaine des réalisateurs, you premiered Ghost Tropic, 2 films in the same year, right?
Even crazier. So Berlinale is in February.
Yeah.
And Cannes is in May.
Yeah.
And when I presented Hellhole in Berlinale, Ghost Tropic, we still had to start shooting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the film was like shot and edited in 3 months.
That's amazing.
Which is obvious if you see. I hope it's not obvious, but it was.
Yeah.
But let's watch it.
Okay, let's watch it.
See how we go.
Monsieur! Monsieur! 2 minutes! Deux minutes. Je dois retirer de l'argent.
Ah ouais, c'est fermé, hein.
Ah bon?
Ouais. Allez.
Merci. Ça m'est pas arrivé en 20 ans. En 20 ans, je me suis jamais endormie dans le métro. Alors maintenant, je dois prendre un taxi. Et j'ai pas d'autre solution que de tout.
Et voilà, distributeur d'argent.
Ah, merci.
Ça a marché?
Ça a marché.
Da, dacă are... Vezi să nu-i se facă rău atâta tot. Nu. Da, deci primul oral al galben și când vine mama acasă e de la roșu. Dacă trebuie să-i dăm de 2 ori și pe... Da, nu. Nu, fă cum știi tu mai bine și... Nu, bine, hai că trebuie să plec. Hai grijă, ceau. Ça a marché?
Ça a marché.
C'est un exemplaire de 4 prévu.
Ils étaient
Après,
4 avant.
pas 4. Maintenant, 1. C'est 3, c'est mûri. tout ça, ça sera démoli. Il va construire un paradis aquatique subtropical. Tropic Time. Tropic Fun. Les choses vont changer ici. Bon. Le bus de nuit part juste au coin, là-bas.
Ah, je savais pas.
Il va dans le centre.
Ça, c'est pratique.
Ouais, c'est facile.
Merci.
De rien. Bonne nuit.
Bonne nuit. De la vanille?
Ouais. Bonne nuit.
Okay, so Ghost Tropic, for the people that haven't seen it, it's the protagonist, a cleaner woman that after her working shift, she takes the metro, she falls asleep, and she wakes up in the last stop, and there are no more metros, so she needs to walk until she gets home. And it's like, for me as an spectator, but it's like an adventure that you live with her. I chose these fragments because of two reasons. First of all, I wanted to ask you about the actress Saadia Bentayeb, is her name, if I'm not wrong. And then we see also Stefan Gota, that is the guard, that then we will see him again in your last film. I was wondering, why did you choose them and how was working with them? That's the first one.
So, yeah, I mean, connected to that question, there's the whole question of how this film came to be.
Sure.
When I made Hellhole, the previous film, it was a long process.
Yeah.
It was quite long. It was very hard to finance. It was hard to make because most of us were from Brussels and we were really working in this aftermath of these attacks. So it was also something that was it was loaded, or it had a weight. And I remember just being really tired afterwards. And I was a bit, I think it was very normal, but I was also a bit sad.
Yeah.
Because I want film to be nice.
Yeah.
And I don't mean it in a privileged way of like, no, I mean like, I felt like I didn't really do what I needed to do with the film. And then I just started thinking like, but then what is it? What is it that I want and that I seem to have missed here? Like, it felt that I missed something. And I think it was the real natural absence of light in Hellhole. Not necessarily hope, because for me, Hellhole, it was a hopeful film, because these were in really hard moments. We still see people find their way and manage somehow, and I saw hope there, but light and lightness, and just something. Maybe Hellhole was a bit like, this is the way the world is right now, and I think the power of film is that, but it's also how the world could be, or maybe how the world should be. And so I think for me there's a sort of moving, as I got older and thought in different ways, I'm moving towards how the world should be. and I think Ghost Tropic, and especially here, they are a bit the result of that change in tone.
Yeah, no,
Feeling to say-
no. I was thinking that what I said at first, that it was for me this trip from violence to tenderness. I think that it's really connected to this feeling you have, like from whatever the world is to whatever the world should be, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and also what I think the world in many occasions already is, but that we choose to ignore, especially in the stories we tell, which is really weird.
Yeah.
But it is like that. So I spoke to Mark Goyes, who had been assistant producer on my first two films,
Yeah.
and who I really like, and who I also knew was thinking about going and work on his own.
Yeah.
I said like, maybe we should make a film together like really fast, and maybe we shouldn't think so much. But maybe the thinking in Hellhole
Yeah.
was a problem. Maybe we thought too much, and
Sure.
it became too heavy and too dense and too dark in a way. And he said like, yeah, sure. And he said, my grandmother gave me 20,000 euros.
No way.
Yeah. And I said,
And you made it with that?
like, if I write you a film script in 2 weeks, he said, then we spend my grandmother's money. Really like that. I was like, okay, 20,000 euros to spend.
That's great.
Here we go. And of course, like I wrote this film with the idea that we would make it a very low budget film,
Yeah.
something very simple, with not too many actors, or only working with people that we knew, with a limited amount of shooting days. We shot the film in 15 nights.
Wow.
And also knowing like, okay, no way we will be able to pay people, because of course 20,000 euros turned out not to be enough, and we had to still look around for some extra funding, but
Yeah.
we found it mainly through people who were just enthusiastic and got
Wow.
aboard. So there's no public money in that
Sure.
film. We later applied for some public funding when we got selected to show the film in Cannes. We got some money to
Yeah.
finish the film, because we
Okay.
also had no money to finish the film. But so, yeah, this came about in less than a year. Like I wrote the film in the summer of 2018,
Wow.
and it premiered in May 2019.
That's amazing.
And that's really short for a film. And so, as I said, we hadn't shot anything when I was in February 2019 showing Hellhole in
Yeah.
Berlin. So
Yeah.
we went home, we shot the film in 15 nights, and then I edited a first version, really raw, but I was like, I'm quite happy.
Yeah.
And then we sent it to Cannes, and they said like, okay, can you finish it?
Wow.
And then we said no, but we'll try. And we had 1 month to finish it.
Wow.
And that was really weird, and I don't think I ever want to do that again, but it was a very special experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine, and even with this idea, right, that to make a film in a lighter way with no money, and then you get to Cannes.
Yeah.
Super weird, right?
Everything was really weird, and everything went really well, and
Yeah.
and it was a little bit scary also, like how easily this went. Like Hellhole was so difficult.
Yeah.
We had so many no's, and like, oh, it's boring, and whoa.
Yeah.
And then this film, we said, shall we do it? And everybody was like, oh, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
It had this like, I don't know, it felt like a bunch of friends coming together to make something, and the joy I felt was the opposite of making Hellhole.
That's great.
And then I was like, but this is what I lacked, maybe. This is
Sure.
what I felt.
Sure.
So Sadia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sadia, one of the reasons for making this film was that during the preparation of Hellhole, I was spending a lot of time in different neighborhoods, but especially in Cité Modèle,
Yeah.
which is a modernistic quartier in Brussels. Tall high-rises from the 70s that were really one of those dream projects of the modernistic architects that has some of these other examples of cities never really became what it was intended to be, and is now inhabited by probably the more poor and sometimes really complicated situations. And so I spent a lot of time there working with boys in the quartier. And I kept wondering, like, just very basic, like, where are their mothers? Like, and I saw their mothers. I mean, I saw them like moving across the square, but then they moved up in the buildings and they seemed to be gone. I made this whole film with a 19-year-old boy, and I never met his mother.
Wow.
Never.
Wow.
So I got really curious, like, already while preparing for this film. So I started to like dig in and like, where are they? And then it turned out that they were actually not as hidden as I thought at all. They were actually quite present, and a lot of the mothers, not of the boy with whom I filmed, she I never met, but a lot of the mothers in this quartier, they formed a group of women meeting each other to make things, to do parties, to prepare stuff. They were just doing this much more low profile than the kids hanging around like being tough and so I just realized like, oh, I had so many preconceptions about these women and about their lives.
Sure.
So many thoughts, and none of them were right.
Yeah.
There were these really strong women with very specific thoughts and ideas on the lives of their kids and of their own lives. And I just remember feeling like, wow, they're not in my film. I also didn't write them into my film. So
Yeah.
maybe I should come back to this. And speaking with these women was really the basis for Ghost Tropic. The conversations we had and the stories they told me of working, and sometimes working late and then coming back, and then sometimes, le métro, c'est chiant. Trouble with the metro and being stuck and having to, like, just these things came to me and felt quite natural. But then, because I knew I was going to make a film with very little money and very little time, I also knew like it will be hard to work with one of them, because they are not real professional actors, and I have some experience working with non-professional actors, but it's a different work. It requires much more attention, time, care. So I felt like, okay, I don't think I will have this liberty to do that, so maybe I should find myself an actress.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing a film called 120 battements par minute, 120 beats per minute.
120 pulsaciones por minuto. It's in Spanish, yeah.
And in that film, Sadia has a very small, very modest, but a very important role in the end of the film.
Okay.
Where there's a long scene in an apartment, and she plays the mother of one of the main characters.
Yeah.
And I just remember seeing her and like seeing her being so present in a modest way, like in a non-man way, like in a non-masculine way. Like we can only be present by the and she was like, for me, she really made this scene. She was like, so I wrote her an email, and then I went to Paris, and we met in a bar next to Gare du Nord, and like we spoke, and then we said let's work, and then we worked. It was really
Easy.
banal and easy.
And in the case of Stefan?
So Stefan is a friend of mine. I've known him. I knew him already before I made Ghost Tropic. He also has a very small part in Hellhole, where he plays a military guy stuck in the metro. Yeah. So he was an extra in that, and then he had a
I remember
smaller part in Ghost Tropic and a lead role
in here.
Yeah.
But he's not an actor, or he is?
He is a theater maker. He graduated last year or 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I think, as a theater maker. But so he's not an actor, or sometimes he does, but it's not necessarily what he thought he would be doing with his life.
Okay.
I think this film changed that maybe. I think he's thinking much more now about being in films also. So let's hope he gets these chances. But Stefan was yeah, just somebody that I don't know, I connect with, and the goal of Ghost Tropic was really to just make a film with people I love.
Sure.
That was the goal. And everybody in the film is somebody I know very well, that I have a relationship with that goes beyond just working. And so Stefan was one of these people who was kind enough to pass by 2 nights and just to be there and do these scenes.
Another thing that I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, it's something that happens in this fragment and happens, I think, that during all the film of Ghost Tropic, but then in here, it's again happening, that it's encounters. There are so many encounters in your films that I think that they are really beautiful. This one is super beautiful. The connection that suddenly happens between the woman and the guard, and then in here we will see another encounter. And I was wondering if it's something that you thought about, that you really like, I don't know, these encounters between people and people talking.
I really like the meeting.
Yeah.
And not necessarily the first meeting, but just meeting. And the first meeting can be really special. Because we are really weird creatures, no? And it's so strange to be alive. And to have this like heart that does things and brain that does things. But then I look at you and I'm like, oh shit, she's like a total mystery. And I'm a total mystery to myself. Like I don't understand myself half of the time.
Yeah.
But still, like in meeting, and especially in these first meetings, sometimes you feel something. Something connects. Something seems to fall into place, and you understand something.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what I like, because that's maybe the true mystery.
Yeah.
The true mystery is that we will never really understand each other, but still we lean into each other.
Sure.
And we carry each other, and yeah, I don't know, that's probably the best thing about who we are.
Yeah, I agree.
Actually, yeah, this film, the thought to me came like maybe it should be a film about just helping.
About just helping.
As something that is vital to who we are.
Yeah.
Helping each other. Yeah.
So let's go to here, your last film. It premiered also in Berlinale in the Encounter section, and you won it, right? And the Fipresti Award too. I was, just let me see, because I don't know if it's 8. Yeah, we should, because there are 2 fragments, 2 encounters, but we could watch the first one and talk, and then the second one and talk. Is that fine? Yeah? Okay.
Bonjour。
Bonjour。
不好意思，我迟到了。哎，你来了，哎，没关系。哎，这萝卜，谢谢。啊， 排队好长。
对啊，自己给你擦头发。
J'ai pas vu venir cette pluie.
Ah oui, oui. Je pensais d'emporter, mais peut-être c'est mieux de manger ici, si c'est possible.
Oui, bien sûr. 哎，阿姨，那个穿短裤的男孩，他不打包，然后在这吃。
哦，OK，好。
Elles sont vraiment trempées tes chaussures. Hein.
Ouais, je sais.
Tu veux les mettre à sécher sur le chauffage?
C'est pas une bonne idée, je pense.
Mais tu dois aller loin avec ça après?
Excuse-moi?
Tu dois marcher loin avec ça après?
Ah non, non, j'habite à Jette.
Ah, Jette. Ouais, j'ai habité longtemps, place du Miroir. C'est chouette là-bas, non?
Ouais, c'est bon. Je vais souvent au parc et ouais, je joue au badminton avec mes collègues. C'est très agréable maintenant qu'il fait plus chaud. Et il y a tellement de gens partout. Et même la nuit, je trouve ça spécial.
Bonjour. Ok.
Bonsoir. Bonsoir.
Merci.
Bonne soirée. J'ai trop de la peine pour ces livreurs.
Ouais. Surtout avec des chaussures trempées.
So, the starting point of here, I think it's super beautiful. Stefan, he's a Romanian worker that is gonna go back to his country, but to clean his fridge, he cooks a soup that shares with the people he loves. It's super beautiful. I really like it. I chose this fragment maybe because it's a first encounter that you were talking about this, but also because I read something in an interview that you say that in Brussels, with this huge diversity, and now connecting with this mystery about meeting each other for the first time, you said there that most of the time maybe you need to ask the person, do you understand what I'm saying? Right? Because there are so many languages. And in this case, we see Stefan, that is Romanian, and the girl, I don't remember her name, Shusho, that she is Chinese Belgian. So I was wondering if you could just talk about this diversity and language mixture.
Yeah, I think also in here language is important. It plays a role as a theme. The way language shapes the world and the way that we as human beings need language to have control and to have a grasp. But so yeah, it's a simple fact that in Brussels there is always miscommunication and this very basic question in meeting someone is it's always like it doesn't matter what they look like. They can look like me. They can have a completely different appearance and they can speak Dutch, but I don't know, so I still have to ask.
Sure.
And of course it's always fragile because it's about people's identity and people identify very closely with language.
Sure.
So it's always negotiate. It's like no negotiating moment.
Yeah.
This meeting, and I find it very beautiful. And from this, very often something arises.
Sure.
The language takes you somewhere. I mean, I don't speak that many languages, but I speak Dutch, French, English.
Sure.
And so, depending also on the language I speak, I feel myself change. I am less funny in French. I am hilarious in Dutch. Hilarious. Um, but you'll never know.
Yeah, yeah.
No, no, and just language. Language is something that I was thinking about a lot because
Sure.
a very important part in this film is the presence of the natural world.
Yeah.
And very specifically moss. And this idea that we as human beings, in order to study something, to really know something, we have to name it.
Yeah.
And it's this naming, especially scientifically, it's very important because if you don't name it, categorize it, you can't study it because maybe you're studying the wrong thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And all your conclusions will be off. And it's also this way of being intimate with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I imagine myself knowing the names of every plant in the forest, how do I move about the forest? Like how do I walk, sit? If I know that these are my family, these beings. So these thoughts, but then also the thought that language in a way is because it's so human, it's also something that separates us from the world.
Sure.
It's also a strange necessity that we need that is, I think, partially responsible for our idea of supremacy as human beings. That we are the governors of the world. We are the namers, they are the named. and that's also, of course, sad. Like, animals don't do this, and they sense probably in their bodies this oneness that we don't always sense. So yeah, language.
Yeah. I was also curious. I think that Shusho, you said, her name is Leo Gong, and she's not an actress. She's a DJ and a film editor. Yeah? Okay. How was...
Well, Leo is someone I didn't know, but I knew of her. Like, we had so many friends in common that it was almost a miracle that we had never met.
Okay.
Like, everyone I know, she knows.
Okay.
And so I knew Leo existed, and I had seen her DJ, and it's like she's mainly an editor for film indeed, and she did a lot of documentary films, and she worked with Wang Ping.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She like My Story is weird, like 2 films, and
Yeah.
Leo like was with me in
Yeah.
in Berlin
Yes.
as an actress in a film.
Yeah.
And 3 months later, she was in Cannes as an editor for Wang
Wow.
Ping's film. It's like, that was next level.
Wow.
It's like, but so yeah, I wrote this role that came, or at least that came together relatively late in the writing process. Stefan's character was very clear from the beginning because he was one of the people that started the whole film. Like working with him was a clear desire.
Yeah.
But then I had this scene in the restaurant, and I had this character that was working with Moss. I had these questions about language, and like very slowly it started to come together. Like, I get it. If she's like, she has like Chinese background, but she's born and raised here.
Sure.
She has such a different relationship to what it means to be here than Stefan. Stefan looks like me. She doesn't, but she's born and raised here.
Yeah.
She's Belgian, and he's not.
Super interesting.
And then we just met, and I said like, it's nice to meet you because I've been wanting to meet you for so long. And first she thought that I just wanted her opinion on the script.
Okay.
Which was absolutely true because I did feel like, okay, I have done my research about the Romanian community, but I've definitely cut corners here.
Yeah.
And so she really helped me like shape experience to who she was, and that was very good. And then we did a simple like casting exercise, and then I knew, you know, she's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, I love her. So let's watch the last fragment, okay?
Bonjour.
Tu fais quoi ici?
Moi, je suis en route pour Vilvoorde pour récupérer ma voiture. C'est dans un garage à Vilvoorde. Et toi, qu'est-ce que tu fais?
Moi, je suis ici pour le travail. Je fais des recherches sur les mousses. Je suis bryologue, en fait. Et là, je faisais un inventaire des différentes espèces de mousses qui poussent ici. J'ai un peu perdu le fil maintenant, mais...
Intéressant.
Tu veux voir?
Oui?
Tu vois, ça, c'est un Brachytecium brutabulum. Et ça, c'est un Atricum undulatum. Deux espèces très communes. La mousse pousse partout et la plupart des gens ne la voient même pas.
Comme moi.
Pourtant, ce que tu tiens dans ta main, c'est comme une micro-forêt. C'est vraiment rempli de vie.
Ouais, je vois.
Les mousses sont les plus anciennes plantes à avoir poussé sur Terre. Je pense qu'elles vont encore être là longtemps après qu'on soit partis. Enfin, je veux dire qu'elles nous survivront. Je pense qu'elles ont beaucoup de choses à nous dire malgré leur taille.
Et ça se mange?
Non, pas vraiment. C'est très difficile à digérer.
Et qu'est-ce que tu fais ici?
Là, j'étudie comment les mousses réagissent aux perturbations de leur environnement,
Comme la pollution.
par exemple.
Et tu les comptes?
Oui, une par une, avec ma petite loupe.
Merci. Je dois y aller.
Ok.
Récupérer ma voiture.
So you were already talking about this scene in the previous question, that you were talking about how we name things, and yes, I know what I was gonna say. When the first time I watched here, I was surprised that somehow having two people looking at something that is almost invisible, paying this attention, made me think about cinema. I mean, about this way of, yeah, somehow the suspension of time. I mean, in cinema, in these kind of cinemas, you get here, you forget your phone, you forget your clock, you're in the dark, and you just, there's like a suspension of time sometimes, not always, but sometimes it happens. And I had the feeling it has something to do with this attention to the moss, the idea of watching cinema. I was wondering if you could talk about how did you get to the moss, this idea that you were already mentioning some things that are super connected to this fragment, but also if this idea was there or not about attention and the suspension of time related to the cinema.
I'm not sure if these are always super conscious thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not something that escapes me. I think. So I just remember reading about moss, and it doesn't happen so often that reading something incites you to go outside. No, I mean that happens, but not so often.
Yeah.
And so I'm reading this book, I was like, shit, I want to see that with my own eyes. What this woman is describing. It's a book called Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and Robin Wall Kimmerer is a bryologist, which is a fancy word for someone who knows about moss. And so she studies moss, and she wrote this small book. She's also, that's I think very important, she's Native American, and she's a scientist. And so she brings, I think, different molds and different kinds of knowledge together in this very small book written for non-scientific people like me to understand this plant and to understand the beauty and the lessons to be learned, maybe. And of course, the lesson is very simple but very powerful. Moss is a plant that gives back much more to its environment than it takes. And that's probably the reason why this plant has survived a great many millions of years and has survived many climate changes, and most likely will still be there long after we are gone. So maybe there is something to learn from the way that this plant interacts with its environment for us human beings, because we do the exact opposite. And I think this was what also for me connected it so much to the story of these people in the film. That, like thoughts of the ground and having roots or having no roots. Moss has no roots. It's a plant that has no roots, and it takes everything from the sky. These questions of where do you belong, how do you live, what does it mean? I mean, these are all giant questions. I definitely don't try to answer them, but I try to think about them through images and what makes us human, and what connects us to our environment. And I think there the moss is a beautiful metaphor in many ways. I was going to say something else.
Don't worry. Thank you. So we are done with the fragments. Well, we will watch something. Nagore, jarri dezakezu kreditoen amese. That is something that really surprised me the first time that I watched your 4 films, that it's your credits. And I wrote a text about your retrospective, and I started talking about this. I really like it. I mean, first the names, and then their roles. All his films, the credits are the same, and it's always like this. It's like,
Not always the same names, huh?
no, but all the names, and then, I mean, a film by all the names, and then the roles little by little. I really liked this way of making an image that could transmit the collectivity of cinema, and I just wanted, I don't know if you want to say anything about this.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, no. The idea is, I think, really clear.
Yeah, it is.
But at the same time, it's also it is paradoxical, because here I am sitting on my own, and it's called a retrospective of Bas de Vos. But again, So as much as I can pretend that this group of people made films, it's also always me that has to
I
carry the
understand.
film from the
Yeah.
beginning until the end. A true way of collective working is something so different.
Yeah.
But but I think for me, what I want to emphasize is that all these people are filmmakers. I think that is something. That's why it says a film by and their names.
Sure.
I think so often we say like, you did the costumes, but the costumes make the film.
Mm-hmm.
You just did the decor, as if it's like something that I have masterminded and then like handed to someone. It does not work like that.
Sure.
These people, they bring ideas and they bring a world of their own that makes the film.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I like. In an ideal world, I wouldn't even put up what they put on the film.
Yeah.
And I think some of them would also be disappointed. So I still put what they do.
Yeah, I really like it. It was just because of that.
Yeah, but I also find it a nice way of,
Yeah,
of speaking about collectivity, but I also am just very conscious of
sure. Yeah, the
how
contradiction or, yeah,
just how little recognition
yeah.
these names get because I am always speaking about and I told this, and it's only half of the story because every step I take, most likely has somebody been by my side who told me there is a better idea.
I don't know if there's any questions or comments from the public.
Hi. More specifically about Here, which for me is the best film of last year. Here you end talking about like what we can learn with plants and etc. And then you were talking about language. I remember of this book, probably you know that, by John Berger called Why Look at Animals. And there is this sentence, like this part of the book that he says that those other layers, dimensions, possibles, visions, whatever, plants can feel it, animals can feel it, we can't. And he says that dogs, for instance, they can feel it like really naturally, and that's why we usually have a dog with us when we go into a wood, because they will know what to do if something happens anyway. And he says that the human way of dealing with these other dimensions is fictionalizing and bringing to fantasy. So fairies, for instance, and all those more specifically about fantasy. And then I remember and hear about that scene that Stefan is like walking at night, and he has the seeds, and then he goes into a dark place. We don't see what he's doing there. He goes back and he has that neon light in the middle of his hands. I was very curious to know what do you see there? What actually what happens there in this moment?
No, the answer is that I don't know. Like this scene is in the film because there is possibility there. There's the possibility of it being something very real. He speaks in the beginning. He speaks about fireflies and catching fireflies. So who knows? Maybe it's that, but maybe it's also a dream. Maybe it's a dream-like state, and we realize that that it must be a dream because it has no resolution. But both are fine to me. Like, and I find it really pleasant not to know. I think we are very used to filmmakers knowing everything about their films, and I also have this tendency to try and be a master somehow of what is really there. But that is at the same time it goes against how I think I am wired and what I really believe in. The fact that I understand anything. And so to have some of these scenes in the film in which I don't really know what they mean or want, but that I feel somehow, I think it's important.
And it goes and it connects to what we were saying and what I just mentioned as well, like of going out of language and something more concrete and just letting you feel whatever it is.
Yeah, and also it's a mode of knowledge that is just a different mode of knowledge. I think, I mean, I've shown these 4 films in many places, and I am really grateful to be able to do that, but I had many times questions where people go like, I don't understand that, why is that? I don't get it, like, and I always think like, a part of you probably does understand it, but not in a rational way, or not necessarily in a way that is translatable into words. Because it's also film, it's images and it's sounds and it's a very direct feeling, sensation. And our need to always translate that into words and to make it sensible is also limiting us, I think, as human beings. I don't know what a critique of a film would look like with no words, but I long for it.
Thank you.
So just to close the session, the question that it's always the last one, next projects. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about it, but not too much about what it is about, because that is very still open.
Sure.
But it's a film I'm for the first time not going to make on my own. I'm going to work with a close friend of mine, and we are going to write it together, but we're also going to direct it together.
So you will present the film, the both of you,
Yeah.
not just you.
And the funny thing is, like, he's extremely, he's shy and he stutters a bit, and he hates Q&As, and he wants to, and I speak a lot, and I'm not afraid of Q&As anymore. So that will be an adventure to do that with him. I mean, I hope we make a film
Sure.
far away from that, so let's see.
Sure.
But yeah, to make a film, to not do it alone and to go through this process with somebody next to me is very special. And the only thing I can say about it is that the film really started because we both were thinking a lot, because of different reasons, but a lot about our mothers and our relationship to them and our distance to them, and also maybe a specific generation of women. And I think, yeah, just feeling that we are getting a little bit older, and they are getting older, and their worlds are I don't know, there are new thoughts, let's say, in these worlds of these women, and I notice it and I feel it, and it makes me, yeah, think about living, dying, being here, not being here. But it's going to be a happy film.
Yeah.
No,
Good.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a film about dying where nobody dies.
Okay.
That's the pitch.
I like it. Good luck. Txalo bero bat basentzat, mesedez. Eskerrik asko.